First, I have to tell my personal story with this conference. So it's my 9th year that I'm participating on this conference. I started as a student, and this is my 6th year that I'm presenting. So from a student, now still PhD student, I'm very privileged to I'm so sad not to be in Dubrovnik this year, but I'm very privileged to still manage to share this research that I did with my student. So my student, Lucia Rajčić, is also here today. Unfortunately, she's a little bit ill. So today I will be presenting. I hope that it will be interesting, and it's just a beginning of I think very interesting topic. Why? Because we have two important factors in this research that makes it interesting. Parliamentary elections, always interesting topic, and of course social media that I think will be more and more important in all forms of communication, and by that in political communication too. So this is the research, okay, that I did with Lucia as her paper for undergraduate diploma. So Lucia was researching under my mentorship. Why it's so interesting? Because when we were discussing what she will be analyzing and what will be her undergraduate thesis for graduation, Croatia was in election campaign. So of course, this was always interesting topic for analyzing and to see how political parties are using this new communication channel. Is it still promotive, or are they in any way using this channel as a communication tool, not only as a marketing promotional tool? And this year was even more interesting because the world is facing pandemic crisis that is putting us all in this health question bubble, but also in one social isolation bubble. And in that bubbles, Croatia was in the process of electoral campaign. So there is ever growing interest in social media and electoral processes. So in this study, our aim was to reveal how political parties in Croatia use social media in this, let's say, crisis election, so for parliamentary elections. Between social researchers, for the last decade, even more, there is growing issue regarding political activities online and offline. And in the last 10 years, we were discussing where political parties, where political candidates present on social media, how they're using social media, and how social media is changing the political communication in this form. But I think that from this year, 2020, we will see social media as a new opportunity for all communication spheres, but by that also for political communication. I will not be very much involved, let's say, in this theoretic part, because I think that it's well known that for the last couple of years there is a huge emphasis, there is a huge interest in social scientists in detecting the practices, themes, forms of political communication on social media. And even though we still have, let's say, internet optimists and internet pessimists in defining the role of new media in political communication, in electoral processes, I think that it's evident that political actors, political parties are using these channels to communicate directly with the users. And with this study, our goal was to see, are they using it as a communication tool to discuss with users, to really gaining communication and gaining social from that social media subject, or they're just still using it as one-way communication promotion tool. That I think it's a paradox of social media. So with a lot of social, and this, my thesis is regarded to the, of course, internet optimist way of using social media channels as a way of gaining, let's say, better political participation, especially with the young voters that are present on social media, and with this change, with our changed media habits and the rise of not only internet, but the rise of social media in informing ourselves, in using media, and convergence of not only media, but also convergence of our communication. I think that these channels, if used socially, can, let's say, make electoral processes and make political communication better, of course. So, oh, sorry, I mistaken the year. Of course, Croatian political context in 2020 was, of course, dynamic, not only because of the, let's say, uncertainty of the current social situation that is influenced by the COVID crisis pandemic, that is also influencing economic and social sphere in worldwide, and by that in Croatia too. But beside that, Croatia faced another huge event in March 2020. That was the big earthquake that happened in Zagreb, that brought another uncertainty and another problems for citizens, but also for governments. And with COVID pandemic and earthquake, all of this brought additional problem to, of course, election campaign that was in plan for the May of 2020. And the context of these 2020 parliamentary elections in Croatia, of course, where the rising growth of unemployment in Croatia, the growing problems in health system that were pointed out by this crisis, but the social problems overall that due to COVID pandemic rise the distrust in governmental decisions. And these are just main events that influenced on political context in Croatia, and that brought new challenges to political parties, not only in communicating their programs, not only in organizing election campaign, but also in making sure that the elections will be held due to epidemic situation and that everything will be fine. So now we can definitely say that elections were held on 5th of July this year. So the final election outcome, I will just be short because I try to translate the sum of the coalitions, but I remain Croatian parties as they are, and I will say. So for the last 4 years, Croatian Democratic Party, as you can see here, HDZ, HDZ, remained the election winner with revolutionary 166 mandates. And after that we have Restart Coalition. So Croatian Democratic Party is the party that is that was a right-wing party, now it's a right-center party. And opposite to that, we have the main opposition party, Social Democratic Party, that was on top of the Restart coalition. And they, with other parties that were in coalition, they won 41 mandates. And new party on this election were Homeland Movement. As you can, maybe those of you who were present when Professor Gerbesha had her presentation, you can see that this Homeland Movement is categorized as a populist movement with Miroslav Škoro, Croatian singer and Croatian entrepreneur, on top of this movement. I bold these three coalitions and main Croatian parties because our research was based on these three election winners. So not to complicate about election outcome, because it was evident that Croatian Democratic Party won really revolutionary results, and really was the, let's say, completely winner of the election. Other coalitions were interesting because of the different spheres of the Croatian political spectrum, but Croatian Democratic Party and Restart coalition with the Social Democratic Party on top were the parties of different spectra, but they were regarding the center, while Homeland Movement was a party that was directed towards the right wing, more right wing than Croatian Democratic Party. Another interesting data from the State Election Commission was the data of budget that each of these three parties had for their advertising. This was very interesting for us because of the, of course, social media advertising that for the first time was included in the budget of advertising, which confirmed the idea of the role of social media in electoral processes and in electoral campaigns. Of course, main Croatian party, Croatian Democratic Party, had the largest budget for advertising overall, and by that advertising in social media. But as we can compare the budget invested in social media advertising compared to other traditional media, we can see here that there is a division between social media advertising and, let's say, website media or portal advertising, display advertising, which is the same internet budget advertising, and traditional advertising, let's say television and radio, which is in decline over the last years because, of course, a lot of users and a lot of young voters are using internet as a source of information. So this was logical step for parties to invest more in online and social media advertising. And regarding this research, two methodologies were conducted. First one is content analysis. So relying on the optimistic idea that social media can improve communication between representatives and those they represent, we were looking at the official Facebook fan pages of the main political parties in Croatia during the 2020 parliamentary elections to determine how willing were the parties to engage in communication with citizens on social media. And by that, my student Lucia conducted a survey analysis among Zagreb citizens, because Zagreb is the capital and had the most users in Croatia, to detect on that sample how citizens perceived political parties on social media, and did social media communications in any form influenced on their decision in parliamentary elections, and how they see the role of social media in political party communication. So we had three research questions. First one was, what was the content strategy of main political parties on social media? And to what extent have political parties in Croatia used social media to engage in citizens? And regarding the survey analysis, our question was how voters perceived social media communication of political parties. And first of all, content analysis was conducted on official Facebook pages of main political parties. We, for now, have the result of three political parties, as I mentioned before. Croatian Democratic Party, that gained the most mandates, Restart Coalition, and Homeland Movement. And the research was conducted during the time of official electoral campaign. That was from 19th June till 3rd July 2020. And we have overall sample of 287 Facebook status messages from those three parties. And on the other hand, Lucia conducted even survey analysis after elections. So we wanted to see why after elections, because we wanted to see did in any form at any participant social media influence it any way on their political participation. So Lucia conducted a survey analysis in August 2020 to see political affinity of Zagreb citizens. Survey had 65 respondents and was conducted online, and the questionnaire had 6 general and 23rd Likert scale questions. So a lot of numbers that I will now lead you through. Most of all, it's important that even though we had 65 respondents in the August, I think still results are interesting, even though because of the, let's say, the sample that was gathered. So in the survey were mostly participated women and young women between the age of 18 till 40. That was the main sample. And the sample was, of course, with higher education and mostly employed or students. Of course, it was online survey, so I think still we get interesting results and support to the content analysis. First of all, I would like to show you the results of Facebook content analysis. So I will just warn you that these are preliminary results. So we still need to analyze the communication of other parties that also gain significant number of mandates. So I think the results after that will be much relevant to conclude about communication during the election campaign in Croatia. But for now, I think it's good to see the strategy of three, let's say, election winners in Croatia. First of all, our goal was to detect general information of the status message. So to see what were they posting, how they were posting, and what was the intent of that Facebook post. Well, most of all, they posted text and photo, text and link, which was really disappointing for me, because when we talk about the growing interest of social media and let's say so many opportunities that they can have, and so many budget that was invested in advertising on social media, we still have classical way of communicating that's in form of text and in link. And of course, most of the status messages were political. None of them were, let's say, more personal, which was, of course, logical for political parties, but also it was obvious because of the election campaign. And interesting thing is that parties were really trying to be informative about their activities, and also informative in electoral processes, about the pandemic and the safety of political participation, elections, etc. And of course, interesting results were regarding the tone of the messages. Our expectations was that Croatian Democratic Party, which was leading party for the mandate before, and that it will have supportive tone of the messages, but they were really competitive, and they were using, as you will see later, a lot of negative campaigning on social media. Other Croatian parties, Social Democratic Party and Homeland Movement, were also a lot of competitive on social media about their communication. Regarding the dominant strategy of the post, as you can see, Croatian Democratic Party was not very, let's say, supportive of their projects before, and were not very optimistic about the future with them in the future, but they were really attacking the opponents, and most majority of the posts were regarding, were dealing with the negativity about the other opponents, especially Social Democratic Party. While on the other hand, Social Democratic Party that was trying to gain, so the Democratic Party is the still larger opposition party, was really optimistic and of course giving the people hope about the future. So this was really, let's say, opposite trend in deciding about content strategy on social media. And the other hand, Homeland Movement was very traditional and patriotic in their Facebook posts, which was really interesting in let's say, detecting and analyzing Facebook results. So for Croatian Democratic Party, most of the status messages were dealing with campaign and politics. So they were really, let's say, focused on political part of election campaign.
Maria, we are limited with time, so please, if you can speed up.
Okay, I will now give you the most important results. The most important results for me are that the parties were focused on promotion, and as you can see here, there was none indication of engagement. As for online engagement and for the online engagement, which was really shocking in the area of social media, not to gain any kind of engagement. And for the survey analysis, so the sample was really small, and it was dealt only with let's say the sample of city of Zagreb. So we can see that respondents were familiar and were content with the results of the election. So it was obvious that Croatian Democratic Party will gain results for them. And I will now just show you that this interesting thing that we found on this really sample is that respondents said that they see that political parties were active on social media, but they didn't use social media as a form of informing themselves about. I will now skip to the conclusion because I will explain the results later, and in your questions you can ask about any part of research, so I will not steal time anymore. So just wanted to say that it's really interesting in this survey analysis, even though it was on small sample, it was still very interesting because we had young voters, mainly young voters who were respondents in this survey analysis, and they think that it's important for political parties to be active on social media. They see Croatian political parties as important to be active on social media, but they don't follow them on social media, and they don't use social media as a way of informing in politics. There is no conclusion of this presentation because this research is not over, but I think that we are on a clue that for this election, we had political parties with presence but with no interaction, and still parties were focused on promotion and campaigning and not on, let's say, discussing the politics, which of course it's obvious because still in the world and by that in Croatia, politicians, political parties see social media as a marketing tool, still not as communication tool. And young voters don't engage in politics on Facebook, even though they use social media as a primary tool for informing themselves. And they perceive politics on Facebook as politicians who don't engage with users, who use social media only as promotional tool. But users think that it's important that political parties are on social media. And of course, it was small sample, but social media didn't in any way influence on political decision and political participation. So thank you so much for the patience.